Domata Peko is going to be Colorado's new defensive line coach, and he checks a lot of the boxes, Brian, for what Coach Prime looks for in terms of the pedigree of his coaches, having an NFL background. He doesn't have the coaching experience, kind of like Marshall Falk coming in, but 40 years old. And I think in that defensive line group, it's all about setting that just that mindset of those guys. And we heard Vorn Sapp talk last year about how we're going to come in there and be mongrels and leave a cape to tell the story. I think that based off what we saw from Domata Peko in his 15-year NFL career, that's the type of defensive lineman he was.
Yeah, and from all accounts I've heard, I mean, great guy, just fantastic person, and yeah, doesn't have a ton of coaching experience, but I think one of the boxes he checks is that he did spend this last year with the Dallas Cowboys, working under Mike Zimmer, who we know is a close friend of Coach Prime, and when you got the Mike Zimmer seal of approval, that's a pretty big box to check, and so clearly he did something working with the Cowboys this last year where Mike Zimmer was like, yeah, you need to hire this guy as your defensive line coach. And the other box he checks is he might have the best Philip Lindsay impression I've ever heard.
Yes, I saw that.
I mean, that was one of the funny clips during his 2 seasons with the Broncos, 2017, 2018 is he was talking about Philip Lindsay, who was a rookie with the Broncos, and had one of the funniest comments ever about Philip Lindsay. He was showing a lot of respect, but did a little Philip Lindsay impression, which was really funny.
Born in Los Angeles, grew up in American Samoa, comes over, does the JUCO route, and then transfers over to Michigan State. A really good progression of his
Yeah.
career through the NFL, over 600 tackles. As a player, there's no doubt that he was a boss out there on the field. In terms of how that translates to being a coach, I think part of the reasons that I like hiring a guy that's a little bit younger and has not been kind of in this college football churn of jumping from job to job is that we've seen with some other guys that have come in without a ton of experience coaching, they have kind of that just hunger to
Yeah.
teach, and they seem very inspirational based off just how they're feeding off the players.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And look, there's a lot of players that show coach qualities while they're playing, and you can see that. I mean, there's players you and I have covered that like, man, that guy's gonna be a coach someday, because you can tell just in our interactions with them. But I think one of the big things I like is not only did he work with Mike Zimmer this last year, but he played for Mike Zimmer for a number of years with the Bengals, and Robert Livingston, the Buffs defensive coordinator, was on that Bengals staff. They were together for 5 years with the Bengals. I have to assume that Coach Prime talked to Robert Livingston, who probably knew Pecco pretty well, and said, yeah, this guy, he was a leader among our group. He was certainly a guy that showed some coach qualities, and I love those two aspects. The fact that he's been with for a number of years, Mike Zimmer and Robert Livingston, and I would imagine both of them signed off on that pretty highly, and to bring him in, because I don't think, if he's a guy that as a player, like, he struggles grasping the playbook and things like that, or he's hard to coach, they're not going to bring a guy like that in.
Yeah, and he inherits, Brian, a really talented group. I think you could make an argument that the defensive line is as deep, if not the most deepest group in this entire football program right now. You've got 4 guys that return on scholarship, and kind of a lot of this development is going to be provided by the coaching, but you would assume that Inquin Barnes and Torian Carter now healthy, and you've got Amari McNeil coming back, Tawfiq Thomas, and then you bring in, maybe the headliner of their entire transfer class was Jaheim Otis and Coleman, and you've got a bunch of new faces in that group. Really got, what, I think 9 scholarship guys on that D line right now.
Yeah, I think it's 9. Gabriel Lightfoot from Fresno State, was a
Yes,
productive
yes.
player there. Tavian Coleman was pretty pretty productive at Texas State. And then a couple of high school guys. I know they're high school guys, but Christian Hudson and Alexander McPherson. I mean, McPherson is one that I remember that first Alamo Bowl press conference down in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Ben Finneseth and Charlie Offerdahl when they first arrived. I think it was Ryan Koenigsberg. He and I were there. I think he asked both of them who are the freshmen that are standing out, and they both got wide eyed. Were like Alex McPherson, and Ben Finneseth had a comment like, "Yeah, he's clearly learned from me. I taught him everything." But McPherson's made an impression, and you look at the well off videos, things like that. McPherson does not look like a freshman. He looks very
No.
much like he
Oh, yeah.
belongs in that veteran group right now. And so, yeah, I think that's a very intriguing group to me. You lose some really key players in Shane Cokes and Chidozie Nwankwo. But I look at the guys coming back and especially Torian Carter, who we didn't get a chance to see a whole lot last year, but is going to use a medical red shirt and come back. You have to be excited about some of those guys, and I think Amari McNeil is a player that it's just he's ready to explode in my mind. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
guy that has shown some really good flashes the last 2 years. I thought he got a little bit better this last year than the year before, and to me, he's just one of those older players now that is ready to explode and be a potential star. And so, yeah, I like this defensive line group, and you got to love the fact that between Domata Peko and Warren Sapp, 28 years of NFL playing experience that these guys get to learn from.
Yeah. And I think that is a key here too. And the chemistry between Warren Sapp and Domata Peko, like
Yeah.
just kind of that synergy that we saw with him and Damian Lewis, who has gone back to Miami to coach at his alma mater. You bring in George Hilo. I think that's the question mark, not necessarily not a lack of not a lack of faith in those coaches, but just how is that relationship going to work? Will it be kind of the way we saw it last year? Because I thought that was one of the keys for them having that improvement defensively was the fact that front seven group really kind of meshed well together in that room.
Yeah, and from what we can tell, I mean, obviously Warren Sapp's got a fun-loving personality. It looks like Peko has a fun-loving personality.
Yeah.
I can't imagine those guys not getting along. And you know, you talk about the coaching experience. Warren Sapp didn't have any of it when he got here last year, but it's clear when you talk to those players, they learned a lot from him. And I think if you can teach the position, you can coach, right? That's what coaching is. And that seems simple, but there's a lot of people that can play sports and be really good at it, but they don't know how to teach it. They just know how to go out there and do it themselves. I think it's clear Warren Sapp knew how to teach it, and because these guys learned a lot, and I think that Peko has shown he must have shown some traits with the Cowboys this last year and during his playing career that he can teach it as well. And so those guys are going to listen. All those guys, every position have talked about. Hey, when you have somebody that's been there, you listen, and so those guys are going to listen to Sapp and Peko. And so I think it's going to be an interesting group. I expect them to have a lot of fire because both those guys played with a ton of fire in their NFL careers.
Yeah. Even his was it Troy Polamalu who he put down as a fullback in the NFL? That's a fun clip if you haven't seen
Yeah,
that on YouTube as well.
yeah, I haven't seen that one, but yeah, that's a lot of hair between Palomalu
Yeah,
and
right.
Peko.
Right, right. No, no question. Uh, where do you want to take this, Brian? There's been some drama as
Yeah.
we've covered this hiring process, and um, I just want to talk about football, man. But like sometimes the media dynamic at Colorado is a little bit off in the sense that, uh, I mean, you have like the USA Today that has 130 FBS programs that have committed minor recruiting violations. Who do they write about? Colorado. And that's messed up. That's not cool. Uh, we shouldn't get lumped in with that group of journalists
Well, even
that
look,
are,
I'll say real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off, but even
yeah,
worse,
go for it.
you've got an athlon who, look at the stories that they've put out about Colorado. I mean, made up stories about the culture of this program because those are clickbait things.
Right.
Yeah. So, yes, to be lumped into that. You can continue your point, but I just want to mention there's
Well,
even worse than the USA Today examples is, the athlons and things like that, that, they just put stuff out to put stuff out.
yeah, I'm fine not being first on a story. If
Yeah.
I put something out there, I'm going to have it vetted, and I don't want that called out by somebody that is hiding behind semantics. We always know in these hiring processes that
Mhm.
there's a background search, and sometimes that lingers on a bit. It doesn't mean that it's not as close to official as possible.
Yeah. And I'm the same as you. I'm fine not being first. And in this example here, I was not first. And I was doing other things on Tuesday evening when this came out, and I saw it about 9:30 at night, and it had already been out and talked about on social media for a couple hours. And uh, for someone to say, to cite sources I know you don't have, yeah, yeah, I have a source. I'm not putting that out there unless I have a source. And so I texted a source at 9:30 at night and said, "Hey, is this true?" They wrote back and said yes. And I said, "Done deal?" Question mark. And they wrote back, "Done deal." And this is a source, and there's a couple sources I have that if they tell me something, I know it's absolutely correct. And in 15 years of covering this program, and you're the same way. You've been there for even longer than I have. I know I can speak for you on this, and you just said it, but I mean, I don't put something out there unless I've confirmed it with something. I'll let something that's been a rumor or sitting out there by someone that I don't know, it'll sit there for a day if I haven't confirmed it yet. So
Right.
when I confirm it, I'll put it out. And I think that you and I have built reputations, um, as being, Buff fans know that if you and I confirm it, that it's true. And we've never been wrong. And it's not about being, first. It's about being right. And I've made sure that I'm right every time I put something out. And this one I knew I was right because I confirmed it with the source.
Yeah. And then the other part of it, like in terms of a family and all that stuff, comparing that to not informing next of kin about somebody passing away and reporting on that, like that's so out of bounds from a comparison standpoint that I don't even know how to touch that. Um, Bottom line is we want to cover the Colorado football program the way it's meant to be uh, covered and not be called out when we did nothing wrong, I guess is at
Right.
least that's I don't want to speak for you. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. And I mean, we did what journalists do. And, um, you know, this person was, talking about under the guise of journalism and pseudo journalism and things like that. That's how it's done, and, they're saying if they say a source, you can't quote somebody, then, basically saying it's not credible. Like, okay, so essentially everything Adam Schefter has put out over the years is not credible because they cite sources. And Pete Thamel and guys like that, they cite sources because there's people that don't. I don't want my name on this, but this is true. And there's sources that are agents, there's sources that are other coaches, and whatever it is. But yeah, uh, I I don't put stuff out unless it's a source I trust. And there's a few sources I really trust, and they've never steered me wrong. And so yeah, I, it irritated me. I know we weren't named specifically, but we know who we know we were in the thought process there. And um, yeah, that just bothers me because I think that over the 15 years I've covered this program, I've built a reputation as being okay. If Brian puts it out, we know it's true. And I think I've built a reputation within the building over at CU that they can trust me as a journalist. And to be called out by that, on that irritated me.
Yeah. And not to belabor the point, like I really do want to move past this. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a media issue that's going on in Colorado right now. That's an easy fix. But I don't know what, they maybe double down, batten the hatches and just cut all media out. I don't know, but like I think there is definitely still a desire out there for people that are going to share their opinions and share how they really feel about things. And I'm a glass half full guy. You've been the same way all through our interactions over the years doing these analysis videos. And yeah, it's frustrating, but there's a lot of fans out there that are just like, stop talking, let us focus on CU football. And I kind of get that. I want to get back to that as well.
Right. Yeah, me too. And to say it's a detriment to the program to to put something
Right.
out, there's no detriment to the program. The guy was already there and working, and so
Yeah.
and you know, tying up loose ends in their personal lives, I get that, but if their families don't know by now, by the time he's already there working, that's a problem he's got, and so I kind of laughed at that one because um look, he's already there working. If it's out there, I'm sure his family knows where he is
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that he's moving to Colorado. So yeah.
But Domata Peko, a great hire for the Buffaloes, it seems.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited about it, and I'm excited. The first time we talked to him, I want to ask him about Philip Lindsay. Uh,
Yes, yes. Maybe we can get Phil up there. I always like seeing him around.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Good breaking this down, and I'm sorry for all the drama out there for the folks that don't care. But sometimes you got to stand up for what's right, not always popular, and that's why I think what we try to do here. And Domata Peko will take over that defense line group in Boulder.